Hello, everyone. I'm Guillermo Figueroa, and welcome to this first of live stream videos from the Santa Fe Symphony. Hello, everyone. We are here to talk about music, about what the symphony is doing. I want to answer some of your questions. We've already had several questions submitted, so I hope we have a good time with you and you enjoy this time. So these are extraordinarily difficult times, and it's been very difficult for all of us at the Santa Fe Symphony to deal with the cancellation of our concerts and everything that goes along with it. But we are being very busy preparing a fantastic season for next year. I will touch upon that in a little bit, but I would like to get to some of your questions, and you can certainly submit some as we go along in the program. Catherine from the office is very generously helping me. She's typing her questions, so this is going to be very informal. We'll deal with everything that goes along. So anyway, one question that came up that has to do with orchestras, and it's something that I think everybody wants to know about, is about tempos in the orchestra. First of all, what does a conductor do, and how do they do it? What is the most important thing that a conductor has to do? I think that the first and foremost decision that will affect everything is tempo. George was interested to know how I choose that. He heard my performance of the opera Il Postino with the Opera Southwest, and he writes that he thought the tempo was a little slow, but as the opera progressed, I really appreciated the tempo. Thank you, George. That's a very good question. How does one choose a tempo? The most important decision a conductor has to make. First and foremost, what does the composer want? That's what I always ask myself and what I try to determine. There are many ways you can figure this out. They give us an indication. They will call a piece allegro, which is fast, or presto, which is very fast, or adagio, which is slow, or grave, which is very slow. But the question is always the same. How slow? How fast? What fast? How fast is fast? Sometimes they will give a metronome marking, which helps a lot. But you can't apply a metronome to an entirety of a piece. There's always different sections with different characters, and you have to gauge that. So some composers, like Brahms, for instance, was notoriously anti-metronome. He refused to put metronome markings to his pieces because he thought that the performance should have the widest choices. Others, such as Bartók, would write incredibly detailed markings, even going so far as to give you the timings of certain sections of a piece. From here to there should last 22 seconds. Impossible to adjust to that. But there's also other criteria. How well is this going to sound? X tempo. If a fast tempo can make something sound ridiculously frantic, if too slow tempo can make sound something very boring. You also have to determine how are the acoustics of the whole. If they're very live, fast tempos will make the music sound garbled. So you have to slow down. You have to take into account the abilities of your players. That's not really an issue with a great orchestra like the Santa Fe Symphony, but you have to account for the whole and how people are reacting to the music. So there's a lot of questions that, a lot of factors that go into this decision, and tempo can easily make or break a conductor's performance of a piece. In the case of Il Postino, the opera that he commented about, you also have to take into account, can you hear the words? Are they being sung in a way that you can understand them? That's a very, very big criteria. So we take all of those things into consideration. I want to see if there's other live questions that have come in from Catherine. No, but I still have many more here to go. Do I like working with recent competition winners or as soloists? Or do you find that they are sometimes too young to have an emotional mastery of the repertoire? Very interesting question. It depends on the soloist. Um, the level of music education and teaching um, that goes on nowadays at our conservatories, it's so extraordinarily high that it's inconceivable that some of these competition winners would not be up to par to mastering certain repertoire. That has not been the case to me. I've always enjoyed working with very young soloists. They bring a fresh, new approach to repertoire that has been true and tried. So, besides what is mastery of the repertoire, it's always a very subjective question. So, whatever interpretation they bring, I would always try to support, and I never try to get in the way of a soloist because they're the ones that are playing the piece. My job would be to give support and make them sound as good as possible. So there's my answer to that one. Um, Other questions. This is from Lori Rossi, who is one of the great supporters of the orchestra and a pretty good conductor herself. She has won the prize to lead the orchestra in pieces at our Christmas events, and she's done a terrific job. Thank you, Lori, for all of that, all of your help, and for your question, which is, Guillermo, what conductor, living or dead, is your favorite? Oh man, that's a very, very difficult question. For one other reason, because my professional life is so busy, I am always doing concerts, traveling, going to here and there. I actually don't hear that many concerts. So I have not been as exposed to many of the conductors um, currently working as other people. I can tell you about some of the great favorites. My idol for many years since I've been a kid was Arturo Toscanini, the great Italian conductor, most famously known as the conductor of the NBC Symphony in the 40s and 50s. There's a certain magnetic and exciting quality about his conducting that I've always admired. His performances always seem to be on fire. It is a quality that I think, and they're actually always very much on the side of faster tempos, since I mentioned tempos before. So I like his approach a lot. Another one that I have also admired a lot is Claudio Abbado, another Italian conductor. He has different qualities than Toscanini. There's a certain mellowness and a certain refinement about his music making that I think has been a great inspiration to me. So, two Italians, and I will have to mention a third Italian, which is Carlo Maria Giulini. The reason I like Giulini is because he produces an incredible sound, sheer sound out of the orchestra. Now, you're all probably wondering, what do you mean produces sound? The conductor doesn't make a sound. The conductor elicits a sound and asks for a response. The musicians, the performers are the ones that make the sound. However, it is a fact that every single conductor carries their sound with them. And I have seen that put to the test when I was doing in the training phase of my conducting career, where I had teachers and we would all stand up in front of orchestras to try our abilities. It was unbelievable that every time with the same orchestra, anybody different stood in front of the orchestra sounded different immediately. I'm not sure why that is. I think it has to do with the physical motions of the conductor and how a player responds in kind to do that. But every conductor carries their sound, and Giulini had one of the most incredible sounds of anybody that I have ever heard. Um, Finally, I have to mention the great Colin Davis, British conductor, and the reason I admire him greatly, not only for his brilliant musicality and magnificent interpretations, is because he was probably the greatest champion in our time, excuse me, of the composer Hector Berlioz. Those of you that know me know that I'm a fanatic of Berlioz. And Colin Davis was the greatest advocate and made some of the best recordings of his great, great works, and was a leading uh, champion of Berlioz music, and help him bring him out much more into the open now. And now we recognize Berlioz as the great master that he is. So those are my favorite conductors. There are many that I admire for many reasons, but we could go on for a long time with that. But I'll move on to a different question. Um, why the interest in presenting more 20th and 21st century work on our next season program? First of all, a symphony orchestra is a living, breathing organism. It has been, the symphony orchestra has been the greatest laboratory of music for composers over 3 centuries now. And I believe that few machines invented by humankind are as extraordinary as a fully functioning symphony orchestra. So you have this incredible instrument which has inspired composers for many years. Every single masterpiece of a great composer, Beethoven, Mozart, Haydn, Mendelssohn, Strauss, Schubert, Mahler, you name it, was new at one point, and people went to hear that music. And that's how music kept growing, and how we've built up this great repertoire over the years. It's really, really, really important for music to stay alive, that we keep presenting new music. That has been the traditional role of orchestras all through time. And people, in fact, would go to the concerts to hear the new compositions. What happened? Why that change, and why has there been resistance now to presenting newer music? That warrants a question like this. The fact is that music changed a lot in the 20th century. It became, we'll use what is considered a bad word in music, atonal, dissonant. And some people didn't like that. But you have to understand that composers were pushing the boundaries of music and trying to stretch everything to a incredible limits. In doing so, many composers, not all, stretch them too far for many people's taste. There was a period of music, say from the 40s to the 70s, 80s or so. All these periods always overlap. There's never very clear boundaries in music, in which music became indeed very dissonant. And a lot of that music has not survived, but somehow that's what people keep in mind still as being modern music, which in fact is actually very old. That dissonant style of composition um, was already passé 30, 40 years ago. In fact, from the last 30, 40 years or so to the present, music has undergone a different revolution. We have gone back to um, more traditional melody and harmony with a modern language, with everything that we have learned over time. But music is what we actually call contemporary music, meaning music that has actually been written now. It's not at all, for the most part, dissonant or atonal. In fact, it's the very opposite. We have great representatives of all that. Miguel del Águila, the composer, Daniel Catan, that wrote the opera El Postino, Roberto Sierra, composers, other composers that use melody in a very different way, but are very attractive because of their rhythmic drive, like John Adams. So we have a lot of composers that represent a new flowering of a type of music. And we'll be presenting a lot of that next year. In fact, I'm thrilled that we have not only a lot of new composers next year, but three female composers, which we all have to admit have been grossly and unjustly underrepresented in concerts all through musical history, starting from somebody as talented as Clara Schumann or Fanny Mendelssohn, the sister of Felix, and several other examples like that. So next year in our season, we will be featuring first composer Vivian Fung, who will write. Actually, I'm not sure if she's written already, because we, the symphony, are part of a consortium of orchestras that will commission a trumpet concerto to be performed by trumpet virtuoso Mary Elizabeth Bowden. So this is the Vivian Fung Concerto, which will be featured in January. In February, we have another one of the most important composers of our time, Jennifer Higdon, and we're doing her terrific symphonic poem, Blue Cathedral. And for our March concert, a female composer of the past that many of you probably have never even heard of, and a lot of people have not heard of at all, Florence Price. She's more of the Romantic era in the end of the 19th century into the 20th century. So her style spans more the styles of Brahms, Strauss, in that era. And she wrote a magnificent symphony that will be featured at our March concert. So this is all really, I think, very interesting. We keep the repertory growing. We bring in a lot of things of great interest, which I think will be of great interest to you, interspersed with masterpieces that you already should know and love. For instance, in the concert that we're doing, the Blue Cathedral of Jennifer Higdon, we will also feature The Planets by Gustav Holst. And in the concert that has the Vivian Fung Concerto, we will close that program with the great Jupiter Symphony of Mozart. So I hope you support us and come and listen to the symphony and hear these great new works. I should mention another composer that we are featuring in our opening season program in September. Excuse me. Which is Christopher Theophanidis, and we play his work called Rainbow Body. In that same concert, we will have the great violinist Alexei Kenny performing the Dvorak Violin Concerto. So lots of great reasons as to why we want to represent more 20th and 21st century works. I think is a responsibility and a great mission of every symphony orchestra and every musical organization to keep music growing and alive. I hear another question coming in. Let me check in. Oh, hi, Dana. This is a question from Dana Winograd, our principal cellist. And she asked, what have been my quarantine projects? Good. I was hoping somebody would ask that. First, I'll begin by telling you what I've not been doing. I have not been practicing the violin for about a month. I figure that sometimes it's really good to have an actual bodily physical rest. Playing the violin or the cello or any instrument is incredibly physically demanding. And I have found that periods of rest can greatly contribute to your playing when you do return. So I'm taking this as an excuse to do that. not because I'm lazy. No, I've been very busy with other things, but I think it's very refreshing to do that once in a while for musicians. I have instead opted for exercising my musical mind in ways that I never get a chance to do. For instance, one of my favorite projects has been listening to the Beethoven piano sonatas. Why? First of all, I'm not a pianist, so I've never really experienced this repertoire. I've heard some of them, of course, and can identify some of the most famous ones, the Moonlight, the Appassionata Sonata, but I don't really know them. There are 32 of those sonatas, and they span the entire creative life of Beethoven. They are probably the biggest single group of works that created and helped make his development as a musician. So I've been taking one sonata at a time, starting from number one and going in order and listening to them with the scores to really understand what Beethoven has been doing. And it's been quite amazing because I thought I knew Beethoven. I've played a lot of his chamber music. I've conducted all the symphonies and many other works. But the piano sonatas are another world altogether, perhaps because he wrote them for himself. He was, of course, a virtuoso pianist. So there's a sense of freedom, a sense of freedom of expression and form that it's hard to find in some of his other pieces. I know the violin sonatas very well, for instance, 10 of them. And even though they're wonderful pieces, they almost pale in comparison to the expressiveness and boundary breaking expression of the piano sonata. So it's been a great uh, quarantine project for me, which I've really loved doing. I've of course devoted a lot of time to listening to Berlioz, my other favorite composer. But the other project that uh, has taken a lot of time for me during this period is watching Shakespeare. Um, Maybe because I am a Berlioz lover, and Beethoven and Shakespeare were his great inspirations, his gods, so to speak. So I have decided to follow on my hero Berlioz's gods, Beethoven and Shakespeare. I have seen several productions of Hamlet, of King Lear, As You Like It, Midsummer Night's Dream. So it's been really wonderfully refreshing to have time to devote to doing these things that we never have time because of our very busy lives. So, good question, Dana. Thank you. I hope you're doing well and that you're also finding some interesting projects to keep you busy and entertained. Now, let's see what else has come in here. Um, Question above. Hmm. Would Santa Fe Symphony consider broadcast internet performances? Hmm. Uh, I would love to be able to do broadcast internet performances, and it's something we have discussed a lot. And I think that given the conditions, the times that we're living in, it's going to be inevitable that orchestras and musicians start doing that a lot more. There's a lot of difficulties. It's very expensive to produce. You need to have a lot of great equipment. You need to be able to rent the halls to to uh, put the orchestra in is very different than say somebody just sitting alone or a string quartet playing a performance in a small place that you can broadcast. To produce a symphony orchestra is a very difficult and very expensive, very time-consuming proposition. So, um, if we do our regular concerts, of course, then we can do that. So we will try to do that. There's a lot of regulations that we have to go through and contract issues, but it's definitely a topic that has been discussed um, and will be discussed a lot more in the future. I do think that if there's any silver lining um, in this terrible situation that we're all living in is that I think people have turned to music and art via the internet a lot more than they've ever done in the past. And I think that it will, well, I don't think, I hope that this will stir a desire, it will create a thirst, a need to go back to hear and see and watch live performances of all kinds of arts once this situation is over. I really think that's going to be something that will happen. And I hope you'll be there right along with us when we come back, which we plan to do as soon as it's humanly possible. So let's see. I will go back to other questions. Um, what is the most unusual instrument you have ever featured as a soloist when you're conducting? Oh my God. Well, I would have to say that the most, not that it was unusual, but the combination of instruments was unusual. Was the Christopher Rouse, wonderful composer, concerto for percussion and orchestra, only because it uses just about every single percussion instrument you can imagine. The entire stage is arrayed with everything from mallet instruments to drums to cymbals to whatever, and it's really a fascinating piece. I also did a concert with the great trumpeter Pacho Flores, the great Venezuelan virtuoso, and he played a concerto on the flugelhorn, which is extraordinarily beautiful and something that you really don't see very much these days. So anyway, that was a very interesting concert to have done in the way. Okay, so now other questions. Uh, there are certain pieces so extraordinary and exquisite that we really don't want to wait a long time to hear them again. One that comes to mind is Nimrod from the Enigma Variations. What would you think of repeating something relatively short in the following concert? This is from Carl Bogenholm again. Thank you, Carl, for the question. Um, Nimrod is one of the great moments of music because it's a little piece in itself, but it is the one of the variations of the Elgar Enigma Variations. We did that in our concerts, I believe, about 3 years ago, um, and we would love to repeat that. But I think a little more time has to go by. There's so much music to play in the symphonic repertoire, and we are blessed in that the way we works in the Santa Fe Symphony, that our musicians are incredibly and very actively involved in all of the decision process, particularly in terms of choosing the repertoire. Sometimes it's actually absolutely maddening because we have meetings in which we discuss so many programs and there's so many wonderful possibilities, but we always come up, I think, with great selections and programs that um, will satisfy a lot of people. So you might not see the Enigma Variations for another 2 or 3 years, but it's certainly one of those pieces that has to come back fairly often because it's one of the great masterpieces of the world. I hear another question coming in. Um, let's see. Okay. Oh, this is from Gloria Velasco. Hi, Gloria. Hope you're well and healthy. Um, how I have been keeping my artistry alive in the current state of affairs. Well, I don't know about my artistry, my meager talents. I have not been practicing, as I mentioned before, but yes, but do listening to a lot of music. Actually, I have been also studying a lot of scores that we would have done next season, to get a head start, so to speak, and hopefully we will be able to bring back some of the pieces that unfortunately have been canceled this season. I was particularly looking forward to the Rudder Mass for the Children which we would have done in a March concert with our extraordinary chorus led by Carmen Flores Manzi. And of course, the Beethoven Ninth Symphony, which we certainly hope we can bring back to you at another time soon in the future. But probably we'll have to wait for that till the 21-22 season. More questions coming in. Hoping to hear some of the French greats, Ravel, Debussy, and Fauré. Well, you would have had we played our concerts in the March concert along with the Rudder Mass that I just mentioned. The program featured Debussy La Mer. Debussy never wrote a actual symphony, but we all consider La Mer to be the Debussy symphony because it almost feels like that. It's a large three movement structure that fits in. If he had called it symphony instead of La Mer, nobody would have blinked. It's perfect like that. We would have also played at the May concert along with the Beethoven Nines. We had programmed the wonderful Mother Goose Suite of Ravel, one of my favorite pieces. I grew up when I was in Puerto Rico with the Puerto Rico Symphony. I heard that all the time. They played it a lot, and it's one of my favorite pieces. So yes, the French repertoire is something that I love, and we will continue doing that. Thank you for the question. Toby Vigno, our wonderful bass player, and of course, the son of Kevin Vigno, oboist, and Kim Friedenberg, our principal violist. I hope I don't make you blush, Toby, but I will announce here your wonderful news. Toby Vigno, a very young player, won the audition for the Santa Fe Symphony last year, and he became, I think, right, the youngest member of the orchestra. But just a couple of days ago, he gave me this extraordinary news that he has been accepted and will go next year to the famous Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia on a full scholarship to study with one of the great bass players, two of the great bass players of our time, Hal Robinson and Edgar Meyer. So, Toby, fantastic news. My congratulations to you. The only thing is that I'm going to miss you terribly in our bass section. But I think it is a great opportunity for you. You will represent Santa Fe, New Mexico, and your parents very well at Curtis. And I should also mention that not only is he going to Curtis, but he turned down another full scholarship to Juilliard because he preferred to go to Curtis instead. So, bravo, Toby. Terrific. Your question was, Mathis der Maler would be a fun piece for the Santa Fe Symphony to play. Indeed, Mathis der Maler is a great symphony by Paul Hindemith, probably his most popular piece of all the repertoire. Mathis der Maler or Matthias the Painter, a great symphony by Hindemith. We will keep that in our sights, Toby, and we'll program it in the future, I hope. Okay. Oh, Nicole. Hi, Nicole. She interjected another little bit about Toby Vigno, that not only he's going to Curtis, but he turned down Juilliard, but he was accepted to all of the schools that he applied. Boy, those must be some proud parents, Kevin and Kim, and my congratulations to you and my undying admiration for the wonderful job you have done with your children. So bravo to both of you. Okay, Peter Harrington says, I remember the Baltimore Symphony playing the Holes of Planets with photo images of galaxies. Yeah, I think it's something that we have been doing some experimenting. If you've been to our concerts recently, and you know, with video and video displays and all sorts of things. And I think that we will try to continue doing that. Certainly the Holes planets is a perfect piece to try something like that with, and it's something that we will continue doing a lot. If we had done the concert in March when we were doing La Mer, we were going to have a full video accompanying the whole piece, which would have been help done for us by Wildlife Defenders, an organization that we have paired with, as we are beginning to do a lot more concerts featuring things that help the planet Earth. And this is one of the great organizations that did that. So you would have seen a beautiful video, and it's something that is going to continue at the Santa Fe Symphony for a long time. Okay. I see more questions coming in. Let's see. Sorry, Catherine, I lost you there. Okay, I will. Kimberly Friedenberg, our principal violist, the mother of Toby, just sent a comment in that maybe Toby can come back to play with the symphony if we program the Hindemith. Of course, if we can get you back, I will do anything to get you back here to play with us at any time. And of course, I'm already dreaming of Bottesini concerto, Kusevitsky concerto at some point. Why not? Okay, I bet you would like to do that, and I would love to be able to do that with you. Okay, let's see. I think I have gone through all of. Oh, what concert programs on next year's season are you most looking forward to, and why? Well, I like every single music that I program. I like in one way or the other. I do have favorites, but I have to say that as far as great interest, another question? Yeah. We have planned a concert in April of 21 at the Basilica in Santa Fe. Now, this concert should be really interesting for you. If you have gone to the Basilica and seen attend Mass or seen a concert or something there, perhaps you notice it's hard to see, but when you leave with your back to the altar and you're walking towards the doors, to the right in the wall there's a little plaque. Maybe you've seen it, maybe you've not, but the little plaque says, in this basilica, I forget the exact day, I remember it was 1963, Igor Stravinsky conducted his Symphony of Psalms with musicians from the Santa Fe Opera. Igor Stravinsky, one of the all-time great composers, came to Santa Fe and worked with the Santa Fe Opera. They produced his opera, The Rake's Progress, there, and he was here to observe rehearsals and performances, and gave that concert at the Basilica. That concert also featured Mozart 40th Symphony and the Haydn Symphony Concertante. Well, I thought what an incredible historical moment to have happened in Santa Fe with one of the greatest musicians of all time. So I thought, like, why don't we try to recreate that exact concert? And that's what we have planned for April. The Symphony of Psalms is one of his most sublime and majestic creations. Incredibly moving, beautiful piece. Very difficult, especially for the chorus, but with our chorus and with Karen Flores Manzi, I have no worries of any kind. I think it's going to be amazing. And the Haydn Symphony Concertante, which is a concerto for violin, oboe, bassoon, and cello with our principals, and of course the great Mozart G minor Symphony, the 40th. So that's in April. I'm really looking forward to that concert. I see some questions coming here on this. Robin Smith says, I like my quarantine look, Guillermo. Embrace it. My quarantine look, sorry. meaning my beard. Well, this just sort of happened because after a while I figured like, why start shaving? And I just kept going. And my wife, Valerie, tolerates it. So as long as she says it's still okay, I will keep at it. Once she says, no, no, you got to get rid of it, then it will go. So, okay. Questions? Um, let's see. Uh, do I think do I think the current crisis is going to affect is going to lead to structural changes in the orchestra world? I think so. I think it's inevitable. And I don't know what kind of changes we are going to see, but this whole time, somebody said to me, and it's true. It's like a if we approach it right, it's like a reset button on the computer. You have to rethink everything that you're doing, the whys, the hows organizations operate. And the symphony orchestra being one of the most extraordinarily wonderful, magnificent, but also most complex and expensive organizations to maintain. It's going to be very difficult if we have to be very creative in the ways we reach audiences. I think the electronic media is going to be a huge factor. The use of video to bring in new audiences, I think it's going to be very important. Yes, I think it's going to be. We have, in fact, we already have a meeting next week with our orchestra committee to start discussing how are we going to approach next season and other seasons in light of current events. How do we diversify? Um, but so the discussions are already starting and will continue because we have no choice. That's what we have to do. But yes, I think it's going to affect a lot. Okay, more questions here. Um, let's see. A lot of comments for Toby. I congratulate him, which absolutely deserves it. So, um, okay, one other concert that will be very interesting is um, in March. Well, I say a concert, but let's call it an artistic event. We have teamed up with the great Martha Graham Dance Company. We will have them live in Santa Fe, accompanied by the Santa Fe Symphony in one of the most iconic works of dance of all time, the great ballet Appalachian Spring by Martha Graham. This is one of the great classics of all music, especially of American music. Identifiable, you would, even if you don't think you know it, if you hear some of the tunes, you would recognize them. Um, it's spectacularly beautiful piece. I am very excited about it also because I worked personally with Martha Graham many years ago in New York. I played in the orchestra that played at the performances of her company, and I remember seeing her work and rehearse the company. Already a very old woman, but vibrantly alive, and a type of dance that was so unlike ballets. It was such a revolution after the classical ballet, the techniques that Martha Graham employed, and Appalachian Spring is a classic of that. So we will be performing with the company, and the program will also feature another work by a female composer, Augusta Reed Thomas, who wrote a work for ballet that will be created specially for these performances. So that's a concert that I'm really, really looking forward to. It's going to be quite amazing. So, okay. Somebody said I was just thinking a collaboration with dance would be awesome. So that's fabulous news. That's Kim. Um, okay. Well, I don't see too many more questions, but I think we have gone on for quite a bit. I think that we're going to continue to do this every Friday at 4 p.m. There will be not just me. There will be other musicians doing this live event, and Carmen Flores as well, and other players from the orchestra. Maybe we'll have some live music at this event. So please join us next Friday again at 4 o'clock. You can continue sending in questions. You can write to me through the Symphony Facebook page or the website, or you can contact me directly at my Facebook page, and I will be happy to uh, answer any questions, anything that you would like about us. In the meantime, um, please stay safe, stay home. Know that the symphony is wishing you all the very best in this time, and that everybody get across to the other side. That's all that I keep praying that we do. Just get to the other side and be ready to perform and to enjoy the most beautiful music in the world performed by your own orchestra. So thank you very much. I will see you hopefully next Friday. Take care. Now this is where I want to make sure this didn't work last time because I want to save it. But last time it didn't give me that option. But there's nothing else I can do. Cancel. Oh, oops, and live video. I don't want to go back there. So